The first time Eliza noticed the door, she assumed it was a trick of the light, a shimmering rectangle against her bedroom wall that vanished when she blinked. The second time, 3 days later, she stared until her eyes watered, convinced it would disappear. It didn't. It wasn't really a door, more like the suggestion of one. A faint outline glowing silver in the moonlight, visible only after midnight when the house fell silent. Eliza had always been practical, skeptical of the supernatural tales her grandmother used to tell. But practicality offered no explanation for a phantom doorway that appeared and disappeared at will. Tonight, she waited. Clock hands crept past midnight, and there it was, more defined than before. Fine silver filigree traced its edges, and what looked like symbols crawled across its surface, constantly shifting and reforming. Her fingers trembled as she approached. The rational part of her brain screamed warnings, but curiosity pulled her forward like a fish on a hook. "I wouldn't touch that if I were you," said a voice behind her. Eliza whirled around, heart hammering. A man stood in the corner of her bedroom, where no one had been seconds before. He was tall and lean, with dark hair that seemed to absorb the moonlight rather than reflect it. His eyes gleamed amber, with vertical pupils like a cat's. "Who are you?" Eliza managed, backing away until she felt the wall against her spine. "How did you get here?" The stranger gestured toward the shimmering outline. "The same way you were about to leave. Through the veil." "What veil?" Her voice came out steadier than she expected. "The barrier between your world and mine." He stepped closer, and she noticed his movements were too fluid, almost liquid. "It's thinning, has been for months. That's why you can see the doorway now." Eliza swallowed hard. "What happens if I go through it?" His smile revealed teeth too sharp to be human. "You enter the Twilight Realm, my home, and what happens if you come through?" she asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. "I already have." He spread his hands in a gesture that might have been apologetic if not for the predatory gleam in his eyes. "Someone has to collect the toll." "Toll? The veil doesn't open for free, Eliza. It demands payment." He said her name as if he'd known it forever. "Usually blood, or secrets, or years of life. But you're special. The veil has been calling to you specifically." A chill ran down her spine. "How do you know my name?" "Because you've been walking in my realm in your dreams for weeks now. Don't you remember the Silver Forest? The city with towers of glass and bone? Don't you remember the dreams?" Images flashed through her mind. Dreams she dismissed as imagination. A forest where the trees whispered her secrets back to her. A city where the buildings seemed alive, watching her pass with countless hidden eyes. "The council wants to meet you," he continued. "That's unusual. They rarely take interest in humans." "What council?" Eliza's eyes darted to her bedroom door. The real one. Could she make it? And then what? Who would believe her? "The 9 who rule the Twilight. They've sent me to extend an invitation." He bowed slightly, a courtly gesture at odds with the danger radiating from him. "You may call me Vesper. And if I decline this invitation, then the doorway closes forever." Vesper shrugged. "And the dreams that have been plaguing you will worsen until you can no longer tell the difference between waking and sleeping. The veil has marked you, Eliza. There's no unmarking now." She studied him, trying to detect a lie. "Why me?" "That's what the council wants to discover. Humans don't typically see the veil, much less attract its attention." The silver door pulsed, growing brighter. Eliza felt it pulling at her, a magnetic attraction that made her skin tingle. "You have something they want," Vesper added, "though you may not know what it is yet. And I'm just supposed to trust you. Walk through a magical door with a stranger who broke into my bedroom." Vesper laughed, the sound like ice cracking. "Absolutely not. Trust would be foolish, but curiosity." He gestured to the shimmering doorway. "That's your true nature, isn't it? You've always sensed there was more. Always felt something calling." He wasn't wrong. Even as a child, Eliza had been drawn to shadows, to spaces between things. She'd spend hours staring into mirrors, convinced that if she looked long enough, she'd see something else looking back. "What happens to me there?" she asked. "You meet the council, they ask their questions, and then," he paused, "then you make a choice, return here, forever changed but outwardly the same, or remain in the twilight and learn what you truly are." "And what am I?" "That's not for me to say." Vesper reached toward the silver outline, and it solidified under his touch, becoming a real door with intricate patterns carved into dark wood. "But I suspect you're something the Twilight hasn't seen in centuries." A key materialized in his hand, twisted and ancient. Choose now, Eliza. Dawn approaches and the veil grows strongest at night. Her phone lay on the bedside table. She could call for help, but who would arrive in time? And what would they see? Just a frightened woman, alone in her room, raving about doors that weren't there. The rational choice was clear. Refuse, demand he leave, call the police. But the door called to her. And those dreams, they had felt more real than her waking life sometimes. If I go with you, she said slowly, can I come back? If you wish. His smile suggested it wasn't that simple, though few do, once they've seen what lies beyond. Eliza took a deep breath. Something inside her had been waiting for this moment her entire life. She realized, some part of her had always known about the veil, had been searching for it. I'll go, she said, but not because I trust you, because I need answers. Vesper nodded and slid the key into a lock she hadn't noticed before. The door swung open silently, revealing not her bedroom wall but a landscape bathed in perpetual twilight, a silver forest under stars that burned too brightly, too coldly. The council waits, Vesper said, extending his hand. And Eliza, in the twilight, names have power. Don't give yours freely. She hesitated at the threshold, one foot in her world, one poised to step into another. The air beyond the door smelled of lightning and ancient books. Last chance to change your mind, Vesper warned. Eliza stepped through the doorway. Behind her, in the empty bedroom, the door closed and faded from sight. The only evidence of what had happened was a small silver key on the floor, already turning to dust as the first light of dawn crept through the window. And in the Twilight Realm, Eliza began to remember what she truly was. The transition between worlds felt like passing through a wall of water, momentary resistance, then sudden freedom. Colors shifted, becoming both more vibrant and somehow muted at the same time. The air itself felt different in her lungs, richer yet thinner, carrying scents that had no earthly equivalent. This way, Vesper said, leading her along a path through the silver forest. The trees seemed to bend slightly toward them as they passed, and Eliza could have sworn she heard whispers, her own secrets being passed from branch to branch, leaf to leaf. The trees, she began. They remember everyone who walks among them, Vesper explained. And they're particularly interested in you. They came to a crossroads where multiple paths led in different directions. Each path glowed with subtly different colored light. The council chambers are in the city, Vesper said, pointing to the third path. But there's something you should see first. He led her down the forest path until they reached a perfect circle of still water, so clear it might have been glass. Look, he instructed, gesturing to the pool. Eliza peered into the water, expecting to see her reflection. Instead, she saw a version of herself, but with subtle differences. Her eyes had vertical pupils, her features were sharper, more defined, and her skin had a faint pattern visible just beneath the surface. She gasped and stumbled backward. What is that? That's you, Vesper said simply. The real you. Beneath the human disguise you've worn all your life without knowing it. I don't understand. She looked at her hands, then at her reflection in the pool again. The water version of herself seemed more real somehow, more complete. You're Twilight-born, Vesper said. A changeling left in the human world as an infant. It happens rarely, but when it does, the veil eventually calls its children home. The revelation should have shocked her, but instead, it felt like remembering something long forgotten. My grandmother used to say I had the sight, that I could see things others couldn't. She wasn't wrong. The path widened as they approached the city. Buildings rose before them, impossible structures of glass and bone that defied physics, with staircases winding in impossible directions and windows that seemed to look out on different times of day. Welcome to Lamina, Vesper said. The city between. They crossed a bridge of twisted glass, and Eliza saw her reflection changing with each step, becoming more like the creature she'd seen in the pool. When she looked at her hands directly, they appeared normal, but in reflective surfaces, she saw the truth. Some parts of the city may be dangerous for you, Vesper warned as they stood on the bridge. There are those who fear returners from the human world. We should form an alliance, at least until you meet the council. Why would they fear me? Eliza asked. Because change follows those who cross between worlds, he replied. And not everyone welcomes change. They moved deeper into the city, passing inhabitants who stopped to watch them with curious, sometimes hostile eyes. Some whispered behind their hands, while others made gestures Eliza didn't understand but sensed were protective wards. The council chamber is beneath the central spire, Vesper explained, pointing to the tallest tower, which seemed to be made of translucent bone that glowed from within. The walls there are covered with the history of our kind, including those who have crossed between worlds. As they walked through the city streets, Eliza noticed the inhabitants watching her. Some looked nearly human. Others were clearly not forms that shifted between solid and shadow, beings with too many limbs moving with unsettling grace. In a small plaza, a group of these beings blocked their path. "Is this her?" one asked, its voice like broken glass grinding together. "The returner?" Vesper stepped slightly in front of Eliza. "The council will determine what she is." The beings studied her with hungry curiosity. One reached out a hand that seemed to phase between solid and mist. "We just want to see." "Back away," Vesper warned, his posture suddenly dangerous. "She's under my protection until the council sees her." The tension broke when Vesper grasped Eliza's elbow and guided her quickly down a side street. "We need to hurry," he said. "Word travels fast, and not everyone welcomes those who return from the human world." "Why not?" "Because returners bring change. The last one who came back started a war that lasted a century." Without warning, the creatures from the plaza appeared again, pursuing them through the winding streets. They moved with unnatural speed, flowing like liquid between buildings, closing in from multiple directions. "This way." Vesper pulled her into a narrow alley. They ran as the pursuers gained ground, their forms shifting between solid and shadow as they moved. They approached an enormous structure that appeared to be surrounded by a labyrinth of living hedges that subtly shifted position when Eliza wasn't looking directly at them. In the center, a courtyard was visible, where robed figures moved in what looked like a ritual dance. "The council awaits in the chamber below," Vesper said. "From here, I can only guide you to the entrance. The rest of the journey is yours alone." "You're not coming with me. The council didn't summon me," he said with a slight smile. "Just you." At the entrance to the labyrinth stood two doorways side by side. One shimmered with the same silver light as the door in her bedroom. The other was dark, carved from some material that seemed to absorb light. "One leads back to your world, should you choose to flee," Vesper explained. "The other leads to the council. Once you choose, there's no turning back until they're finished with you." Eliza stared at the silver door, feeling a pull toward home, towards safety, but the dark door called to something deeper in her. "What happens if the council doesn't like what they find?" "Then you would wish you had taken the silver door," Vesper said grimly. The creatures from the plaza were closing in. "Choose now," Vesper urged. Eliza stepped toward the dark door, her heart pounding. As she reached for it, she felt a strange sensation, like her skin was too tight, like something inside her was trying to get out. She looked down at her hands and saw her fingernails lengthening, becoming sharper. A pattern emerged on her skittles, subtle scales or markings that caught the light. "What's happening to me?" she gasped. "You're remembering," Vesper said. "The human disguise falls away in moments of stress or strong emotion. It's part of what the council will help you control." The dark door swung open, revealing a vast circular chamber. 9 figures sat in a semicircle on thrones made of materials Eliza couldn't identify. The walls around them shifted and moved as if alive, contracting and expanding with the tension in the room. "Enter, child of 2 worlds," a voice called from within. The 9 rose from their thrones and formed a circle around a central platform. They began channeling energy toward it, streams of light that connected them all. "Stand in the center," one commanded. Eliza stepped onto the platform and immediately felt the energy surrounding her, probing, searching. "Open your eyes to your true self," another council member said. Eliza felt a burning sensation in her eyes. Her vision blurred, then sharpened beyond human capability. "You are one of the lost," said a council member, whose face combined feline and human features in a beautiful but unsettling way. "Taken from the twilight as an infant and raised by humans, not knowing your heritage or power." "Why was I taken?" Eliza asked, her voice sounding different to her own ears, more melodic, with undertones that seemed to resonate with the chamber itself. "To protect you," said another. "A prophecy spoke of a child who would bridge worlds and bring either salvation or destruction to the twilight." One of the 9 approached, holding an ancient text that seemed to glow with its own inner light. "Here," they said, opening it to a page covered in symbols that should have been incomprehensible, but that Eliza somehow understood. "The child of dual nature shall return when the veil grows thin," she read aloud, words coming to her from some deep ancestral memory. "And in their hands shall the fate of both realms." "You understand our language," the council member observed. Another sign. A small artifact was placed in Eliza's hands, a crystal that responded to her touch, glowing brighter and changing color as she held it. Around her, ancient tablets embedded in the walls began to glow in response. "The prophecy stones recognize you," the leader of the 9 said. "There can be no doubt. You are the bridge." "What does that mean?" Eliza asked as symbols began to float around her, responding to her emotions. She felt power coursing through her, both familiar and frightening. "It means you must learn to control your abilities," said the leader. "And quickly. The veil is weakening, and soon creatures from both worlds will be able to cross freely, with catastrophic consequences." "How do I control this?" Eliza asked, watching as her gestures caused ripples in the very fabric of the chamber around her. The environment seemed to respond to her will, shifting and changing subtly. "We will teach you," the 9 said in unison. "If you choose to stay." A commotion outside the chamber interrupted them, sounds of conflict, of pursuit. Something was forcing its way toward them, a creature that seemed to be made of both shadow and substance, its only constant features its glowing eyes. "The Void Hunters," a council member hissed. "They seek to prevent the prophecy. Quickly," the leader said, gesturing. Eliza's clothing transformed, becoming garments woven of what looked like moonlight and shadow. "These will help conceal your power signature." "What are Void Hunters?" Eliza asked, feeling the new clothing settle around her like armor. "Those who dwell in the spaces between realms," a council member explained. "They feed on possibilities, on choices unmade. A bridge like you threatens their existence." The chamber doors shuddered under some immense force. "We must complete the awakening ritual now, or all is lost," the leader urged. "But the choice must be yours. Will you accept your heritage and the responsibility it brings?" Eliza felt torn between two worlds, the human life she had known, which now seemed like a dream, and this new reality that called to something fundamental in her nature. "I accept," she said, and felt power surge through her, an aura of energy surrounding her as her transformation accelerated. She felt stronger, more aware, more alive than she ever had before. The 9 stepped back as Eliza's power flared around her. The chamber doors burst open, and the Void Hunters poured in beings of nightmare that shifted and changed as they moved. But Eliza wasn't afraid. Something ancient and powerful had awakened inside her, and she knew exactly what to do. She raised her hands, and the very fabric of the Twilight Realm responded to her will. "The library," she said suddenly, knowledge coming to her from some deep place. "The ancient texts in the Hall of Memory, they contain the binding spell we need." The leader of the 9 looked at her in surprise. "How could you know that?" "Because I've been here before," Eliza realized. In another life, as the battle with the Void Hunters raged around them, Eliza made her final choice. The human world felt distant now, like a half-remembered dream. This, the twilight, the magic, the truth of her nature, this was real. She looked back once at a fading doorway that would lead back to Earth, then stepped fully into her role as the bridge between worlds. The door dissolved into motes of silver light behind her. The twilight had called its child home at last. If you're loving the magic and mayhem, don't forget to like and subscribe for more dark twists and royal drama.